Grand Canyon National Park, often described as a breathtaking and awe-inspiring place, was the 15th site in the United States of America to have been granted the national park status. The park's most notable feature, as the name might suggest, is the Grand Canyon itself, a gorge of the Colorado River which is considered one of the wonders of the world. Scientists currently believe that the canyon itself was formed between 5 and 6 million years ago when the river cut a channel through the rock. The first European explorers, Spanish explorers specifically, reached the Grand Canyon in the 1540s. However, this site has an ancient history of human habitation dating all the way back to the last ice age. 117 years ago, Theodore Roosevelt visited the site and stated this: "The Grand Canyon fills me with awe. It is beyond comparison, beyond description, absolutely unparalleled throughout the wide world. Let this great wonder of nature remain as it is now. Do nothing to mar its grandeur, sublimity, and loveliness. You cannot improve on it, but what you can do is keep it for your children, your children's children, and all who come after you, as one of the great sights which every American should see." Despite Theodore's attempt, the site was not named as a national park right away, but it appears that he did pave the way, and on the 26th of February 1919, the Grand Canyon and the entirety of the 1.2 million acres was declared as a national park. The Grand Canyon was then designated as a World Heritage Site in 1979 by the United Nations Educational, Scientific and Cultural Organization. Since then though, perhaps specifically in more recent times, the park attracts almost 6.5 million visitors every year, making it the second most popular national park in America, only surpassed by the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. While most of the park's visitors come and go without issue, for a minority of people, this is not the case. Glen and Bessie Hyde disappeared from the Grand Canyon National Park on the 18th of November 1928. Glen was born on the 9th of December 1898 and growing up was taught how to tend to crops and worked as a farmer for many years in Twin Falls, Idaho. Later in life, Glen changed profession and became an expert boat builder, which will prove to be relevant to the case shortly. Bessie, on the other hand, was 7 years younger than Glen, born on the 29th of December 1905. While Glen loved mechanics and woodworking, Bessie had a passion for writing and was an aspiring poet and artist, who unfortunately would never have the chance to develop her talents. The pair first met each other in 1927 whilst on a passenger ship travelling to Los Angeles, California. From what I can gather, the pair quickly became infatuated with one another and would marry on the 10th of April 1928. Glen had set himself a personal life goal of wanting to set a new speed record of travelling through the Colorado River in the Grand Canyon area, while making Bessie the first documented woman in history to traverse the canyon in this way. To that end, Glen had a lot of experience navigating rivers and rapids and used his talents to build a 20-foot long wooden scow to take them on this journey. An article written by the Miami Daily News Records indicates that the pair began their journey on the 20th of October 1928. Bessie had no prior experience sailing in this manner and certainly didn't have experience with rapids, so the pair practiced near the city of Green River in Utah. They used the rivers in the area as their training grounds and Glen brought Bessie up to speed. They made plenty of successful trips through the rapids in the area, and Glen predicted it would take 1.5 months to complete their route through the Grand Canyon. On the 16th of November, the couple arrived at a village on the south rim of the Grand Canyon where they began stocking up on supplies and told a local reporter of their intention. On the same day, the pair decided to hike along the Bright Angel Trail where they met with two renowned photographers by the names of Ellsworth and Emery Kolb, brothers who were based at a cliffside studio. According to ExploreTheCanyon.com, Glen and Bessie introduced themselves to the Kolbs, explaining that they were honeymooners who had been rafting on the river for 26 days. The brothers said that the couple asked to have their photo taken on the canyon rim and would return to retrieve it after their trip was completed. According to Emery, Glen said that they didn't have life preservers, a comment that evoked a warning from Kolb that Glen responded to with a laugh. Bessie, Emery said, looked nervous about the remaining journey ahead. As Glen and Bessie prepared to depart and walked down the trail to their boat, Emery's daughter Emily appeared, nicely dressed. Bessie remarked, "I wonder if I shall ever wear pretty shoes again." I'm not sure that statement at the time was meant as ominously as we can now perceive it. Glen and Bessie were last seen 2 days later on the 18th of November, and their boat was found approximately 3 weeks afterwards. Upon discovery, the scow was floating upright around River Mile 237. All of their belongings and supplies were still aboard, securely packaged and strapped to the boat. As far as I can tell, the boat didn't appear to have any significant damage and, as said, was floating as you might imagine in the river. Glen and Bessie, on the other hand, were not in the area and there were no signs present to indicate where they might have gone. An abandoned camp was found near River Mile 225, but a search of that area didn't provide any results. At this stage, let's have a look at some news outlets who were covering this incident much closer to the time. The Miami Daily News Record reported this. December 22nd, fear that the treacherous rapids of the Colorado River has claimed the lives of Glen Hyde and his bride Bessie grew today as searchers continued to a dogged hunt for the adventurous pair who set out 2 months ago in an attempt to navigate the Grand Canyon in a homemade scow. A searching party working through the lower regions of the canyon sent word here that no trace of footprints had been found in the mantle of snow around the rim of the Great Gorge. It had been hoped that the snow might tell the tale of the disappearance of the Hydes after Army aviators had sighted their scow, but slightly damaged and with its provisions intact on a jagged rock early this week. It seems as though it was assumed that the pair could have made it out of the river if they had gone overboard, and the article continued and stated that the searchers had expected to find footprints leading out of the river, but there weren't any to be found. The river in question was scoured and no trace of the pair could be found beneath the waters. Therefore, the assumption that they had made it to land was made somewhat stronger. This assumption was further compounded when searchers seemed to find a clue. On the 25th of December 1928, the Salt Lake Tribune reported this with the heading, "Footprints Render Clue." December 24th was when the first word of the whereabouts of Glen Hyde and his wife, who have been missing in the silence of the Colorado River's vast stretches for 40 days, was brought tonight by Peeper Prow. He told of discovering footprints of a man, evidently those of Hyde, at Bass Cable Crossing and Ruby Canyon Rapids in the bottom of the Great Gorge. Glen's father headed a land party down to the area and searched alongside those already there, but unfortunately learned that the footprints didn't seem to lead very far. The Salt Lake Tribune also stated that the scow in which the couple attempted to navigate the dangerous river apparently was undamaged, according to the aviators. So whether the scow had minor damage or none at all isn't clear, though given that this is the later report, it probably is not inappropriate to assume that the boat hadn't sustained any damage, which I imagine posed some questions as to how and why the couple had entered the water. Though of course it's important to keep in mind the unpredictability of the rapids, which could have dislodged one of them, leading the other one to attempt rescue. The Salt Lake Tribune indicated that the footprints seemed to suggest that Glen had stopped before entering the rapids to scout ahead and get a better idea of what they were up against. Unfortunately, this finding doesn't seem to provide much of an understanding as to what may have happened. Were the pair still together at this point? If so, did Glen get back into the boat with Bessie afterwards? Or did he disappear at some point during this hike? Were the pair in the boat as it made its way into the rapids and out of the other end? None of these questions are actually clear. All 13 miles of the surrounding riverbanks were searched and no trace of the pair was to be found. In fact, other than the brief footprints, not a single clue was ever found, and at this point the paper trail goes cold. The search was extensive and included a vast array of people, including many volunteers who made the trip down there due to a lot of newspaper coverage. The searchers assumed that the footprints belonged to Glen, and this meant that he was scouting the river, but could they have been an indicator of a third party? Of course, that is speculation and there is no evidence that I can find which points in that direction, but other than the footprints, there were no other clues to go on. The Salt Lake Tribune reported the same theory as I mentioned earlier as to one of them going overboard, followed by a failed rescue attempt. But again, this is something we will likely never know. 92 years later now, and the remains, nor any trace of Glen and Bessie Hyde have ever been found. Now, this was the only older disappearance I'd planned on covering in this video, so while other disappearances have taken place after this one, let's move towards more recent times. Andrew Brunelli, a 43-year-old experienced hiker, disappeared in the Grand Canyon National Park in early September of 2009. Andrew was a highly intelligent individual born upstate New York on the 30th of June 1966. Andrew would later attend the North Carolina State University in Raleigh and achieved a Bachelor of Science degree in computer science. After finishing, Andrew chose to join the US Navy and served aboard the USS Faris. Andrew was well thought of among his peers who all spoke very highly of him and praised his outdoor abilities along with being a skilled fisherman. Early September of 2009 was not Andrew's first visit to the park. In fact, it was stated that hiking in the Grand Canyon was one of his favourite activities and something he did a lot of, and as a result was very familiar with the area. It's not entirely clear what was different this time and why it had gone awry. On the 5th of September, the Coconini County Sheriff's Office received a call from the Andrews family stating that he had planned a solo hike in the Grand Canyon but that they hadn't heard back from him since his arrival at the park. Specifically, the last time Andrew was seen was at 5 AM on the morning of the 31st of August by hotel staff. The Sheriff's Office got in touch with the park rangers who set up and organised the search and rescue efforts. According to NAStoday.com, search and rescue personnel defined their search zone based on the location of Mr. Brunelli's rental car, his past history of short to medium day hikes in the area, and the lack of a backcountry permit indicating a longer itinerary. By Wednesday morning, all of the high probability areas within the initial search zone had been searched and in many cases researched by ground crews, dog teams and technical ropes/canyoneering teams. It's not completely clear how many people were involved in the search, but it seems that the search was extensive and included helicopters fitted with thermal imaging technology. The search radius was scoured, but unfortunately they couldn't find a single trace of him. This search would continue for 4 days until the discovery of Andrew's body was made. On the 9th, it's not completely clear why, though presumably because of continuous failed searches, the decision was made to expand the search zone. This was despite an air of skepticism that Andrew had managed to hike outside of the original zone. According to NPS.gov, with fewer ground personnel to support, the park helicopters was able to engage in aerial search operations beyond the original search zone. Helicopter crew members spotted the body in a drainage north of the Tonto Trail and approximately 2 miles east of the South Khabib Trail in the vicinity of Patty Boot. The body was retrieved by helicopter via long-line operation and taken to the South Rim, where it will be transferred to the Coconini County Medical Examiner. It's not completely clear why Andrew veered off from the trail. From what I can gather, the trail is well marked and doesn't seem to be easily mistakable. This also doesn't seem to be common behaviour from Andrew, nor is it understood how he entered the drainage. Interestingly, a cause of passing was never released, nor is it clear that one was established. All sources indicate that Andrew's body was sent to a medical examiner for autopsy, but that is where the paper trail ends. The fact that Andrew's body was sent to a medical examiner suggests that the cause of passing may not have been completely obvious. The condition of the body was not discussed either, meaning that it is unlikely that he had simply fallen because that information is normally disclosed and apparent. Ultimately, it's not clear what happened to Andrew that day, and the circumstances surrounding his disappearance remain unexplained. Now, let's explore another. Drake Kramer was 21 years old when he disappeared from the Grand Canyon National Park. At the time, Drake was studying geology at the University of Texas, San Antonio, and was said to be an intelligent young man. Drake was last seen by his father on the 29th of January when they went to the cinema together. His father said that Drake was in high spirits and was very positive about university and life in general, which made what happened next confusing to the family. Without telling his family, Drake had decided to first drive to California and then afterwards drove almost 600 miles to the Grand Canyon National Park, alone. Once he arrived, he signed in at the Bright Angel Lodge located inside the park on the 31st of January 2015. According to the staff, Drake spent one night at the lodge and checked out the following day on the 1st. It's not clear what his plans were or what he was doing exactly, but his family received some strange and worrying messages from him on the 2nd. He wrote to them and said that he loved everybody and that he had to give his body to Mother Earth to set his soul free. According to the family, this was completely out of character and they had no idea where this had come from. Of course, after receiving these messages, the family reported him missing. Because of the messages and the obvious concern that they generated, the authorities quickly responded and contacted the park rangers. Together, the authorities and the rangers descended on the area where they found his car parked in the South Rim tourist area at the lodge. A search radius was set up and helicopters flew overhead while the park rangers scoured miles upon miles of the area. StrangeOutdoors.com gives a good account of the search effort. Park rangers and search and rescue teams searched the South Rim area from Hermit's Rest on the west side to Grand View on the east for around 6 days. The Park Service said teams of searchers have walked miles along the canyon rim, searched heavily forested areas, utilised dog teams, performed several over-the-rim technical searches and conducted multiple aerial reconnaissance missions to support ground searches, but the search was to no avail. There is an obvious implication of what Drake's earlier text messages may have been alluding to, but Drake's mother believed that there may have been a way of saying that he just wanted to escape to the outdoors for a while. The search for Drake concluded shortly thereafter and no trace of him has ever been found even 5 years later now. The dogs never picked up a scent at any point during the search and the ground searchers alongside the helicopters never made any sightings or found anything to indicate where he might have gone. This was a heartbreaking disappearance that ultimately reached its conclusion while providing no answers to the Kramer family. Morgan Hyde, who was 22 years old at the time of his disappearance, went missing in the Grand Canyon National Park on the 2nd of June 2015. Morgan lived in Cody, Wyoming and was studying English at the university there and was said to be a high achiever. According to relatives, he was an experienced outdoorsman who loved being outside. He was an excellent swimmer, which presumably influenced his decision to become involved at his place of work. At the time, Morgan was an employee of the rafting company Tour West. Specifically, Morgan was a commercial guide and was part of a group that day leading the visitors. This was supposed to be an 8-day whitewater rafting trip, but Morgan would disappear on land along the Colorado River on the 6th day. Unfortunately, limited information exists here and what we do have is very odd, so let's get bizarre. According to charlieproject.org, the last time that Morgan was seen was at 4 PM on the 2nd, close to River Mile 213 near Pumpkin Springs. The guides, including Morgan at the time, had hiked with the group up a side creek and were on the way back to their boats. Morgan was thinking about taking some time off that day, though it's not clear what for. Perhaps he just simply wanted to take a break. He mentioned to the guide leader that he wanted to take some time off, and it's not clear what the outcome of the conversation was and can find nothing to suggest that the request was denied. The leader of the group walked in the opposite direction to the cliff and spoke to another member of the group who had called for him. Upon looking back, Morgan wasn't there and it was assumed that he had simply gone for a break, though he did say that it was odd that no one saw him leave. The group didn't realise that he was actually missing until he didn't show up for dinner and they couldn't locate him. The group went out and searched for him until 7:26 PM, where he was then reported missing to the authorities. At this stage, I'm going to read an extract from a blog post by one of Morgan's relatives. He was one of the guides on a river rafting trip in the Grand Canyon. He disappeared Tuesday night. Search and rescue arrived Wednesday morning and questioned all the members of the group before sending them on and continuing the search. The area where he disappeared is a small area enclosed by cliffs. It didn't seem as if the search could take very long. There is no concern of predators. He was an athlete and a strong swimmer, and he was wearing a life preserver. At this time, no trace has been found. The location where Morgan disappeared would take days to get to by boat or on foot. It is terribly remote even for an athletic parent. NPS.gov reported. Initial park response included searching the last known area by air and an immediate hasty search by rangers. For the past 6 days, park rangers have extensively searched the river between river miles 211 and 225, and on land stretching from river mile 211 to 215. He was last seen wearing a dark coloured Astral personal flotation device, a blue plaid long sleeve shirt, a pair of Chaco flip-flop sandals, a maroon baseball cap and brightly coloured shorts. With no additional clues to guide the search efforts on land or water, the search will be scaled back to a continuous but limited mode, in which rangers and pilots will continue to search for clues when in the area. In addition, flyers with Hymer's picture and description remain posted at various South Rim locations, and all launching river trips will be briefed on searching for Morgan. One of the searchers at the time stated that he definitely has the skills and ability to perform the job and be a person that we have a high likelihood to find. Clearly, in this enclosed space, and with Morgan's abilities, those involved completely expected to find him, so where did he go? Despite the efforts of the searchers, Morgan was never seen again. No equipment, clothing, belongings, clues of any kind has ever been found, so what happened to Morgan Hymer? Thank you for watching. If you found the video interesting, then please do leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, it helps me a lot. If not, then feel free to leave a dislike, I'm just looking for your honest opinion, so do share your thoughts. And if you enjoy hiking or camping in rural areas, then please do put the extra effort in to be careful. I'd also just like to say a special thank you to my patrons who keep this channel moving forwards, so thank you very much for your support. Be safe guys, and I hope that you've had a great day or evening depending on where you are, and I'll see you next time. Peace.